Next up, we want to talk about manufacturing. And so the lumber that goes into the house is a manufactured product. But let's say in your house you've got a very nice manufactured wooden table, a dining room set. And on that table, a loaf of bread from your favorite local bakery, a growler of beer from your favorite brewery, maybe even a bottle of wine from one of the wineries around Missoula. All of those things represent manufacturing, and Todd Morgan is the Bureau's manufacturing specialist. He also pays specific attention to the wood products industry, and he will talk to us about both of those things. Todd?
Great, thank you, Ian, and thank you all for sticking around. There are several people, of course, that I would like to thank, and those are the folks that work with me at the Bureau in the Forest Industry Research program. I thank them, especially Chuck Keegan, my predecessor and mentor there at the Bureau. I want to jump right into this and give you a little bit of a picture. Hopefully it'll be worth 1,000 words, but I won't use that many to describe U.S. manufacturing. You can see from the statistics here on the slide that the manufacturing employment is down in the U.S. since 2000. It's down about 31%. That's the employment. But you look at worker earnings, worker income, it's only down by about 4% since 2000. And gross output, the gross sales value of the products manufactured in the U.S. is down about 6%. So yes, there are fewer people working in manufacturing in the U.S. today than before. Certainly some of that's due to the recession, but also some of it's due to efficiency, and fewer people can make more things, and those things can be more valuable. I want to give some other sense of the relative size of the different manufacturing sectors in the U.S. economy. Food, beverage, and tobacco is the largest in terms of numbers of employees, and has about 1.7 million people in the U.S. making food, drinks, and cigarettes for us all. Then we have computers and electronics, about 1.1 million people employed in that sector. And then here's the one that was a real surprise to me. Wood and paper products at about 790, 800,000 employees nationwide is actually slightly larger than automobile manufacturing in the U.S. And somebody would have told me that fact, I wouldn't have believed them until I checked the numbers myself. And then you can see petroleum and coal products there. It's actually a relatively thin slice. It has about 114,000 employees nationally in that part of the energy sector. So what manufacturing? It accounts for about 8% of private employment in the United States. Here in Montana, manufacturing accounts for about 4% of private employment. You can see from the trend lines there that manufacturing employment has definitely been trending downward nationwide pretty steadily, whereas in Montana we've seen some periods of growth in manufacturing employment over the past 2 decades. Last year, this time, I was saying, well, maybe we're going to see a bounce here in 2011, 2010, but you can see from this graph that there is no bounce yet in manufacturing employment in the state or in the U.S. So what about Montana manufacturing? Page 29 of your Outlook booklet has the different sectors of Montana manufacturing listed out there, so you can get a good idea of the relative size and value of those, number of people employed. I want to go through a couple quick statistics here. Over 90% of manufacturing employment in Montana is in firms that have 20 or fewer employees. So we're very much oriented as a small firm, small manufacturing in the state. We did do about $10 billion in manufacturing sales during 2011 in Montana. That's about the same as it was in 2010, but it's not shabby. About $1.08 billion in labor income, and again, that's about the same as 2010. So people have asked me, well, what's grown and what's shrunk? Will shrink. There's been significant growth in the decade in things like chemicals, petroleum and coal, and it's about 29% of manufacturing labor income in the state. On the other hand, we see contraction in the wood products, paper, furniture. It's been declining for about the past 2 decades. We've lost about 4,000 jobs out of that sector and about $170 million in labor income out of that sector. Another area of growth, though, is food and beverage. So it tracks right with my waistline, and we can see that growth there, well, it doesn't show you, but we've added about 400 jobs in Montana and about $10 million in income. So there's quite a difference between what we've been losing and what we've been gaining. Adjusted for inflation, I will tell you that that manufacturing pie that you see up there today is about 15% larger than it was in 1990. So the picture is good in the longer run. Missoula County manufacturing, page 28 in your booklet will give you some comparisons with other counties in the state. Missoula County is still in the top 5 in the state when it comes to manufacturing. As Paul Polzin indicated, it represents about 6% of the economic base in Missoula County, about 2,500 employees, and that represents about 3% of the 75,000 non-farm employees in Missoula County. And to give you some perspective, healthcare is about 4 times larger, both in terms of number of employees in the county and in their worker earnings in the county. And state government is about twice as big in Missoula County as manufacturing is. By sector, of course, you can see there that wood and furniture is still a relatively large slice in Missoula County, about 20% of the pie. And other durable goods there, things that include primary and fabricated metals, machinery, computers and electronics equipment. Then we get into food and beverage again. That's in the non-durable side of the equation, and chemicals are actually something else that we produce here in Missoula County. So Missoula County's labor income and employment in manufacturing has definitely been impacted by changes we've seen in the wood products industry over the past 5 years. The losses of the Stimson Mills, the closure of the Smurfit Stone container plant, these have all had lasting impacts in our numbers in terms of manufacturing in the county. Now each year, the Bureau and the Forest Industry Research Program conducts a survey of manufacturers around the state. And we ask manufacturers quite a few questions about, well, what happened last year? What do you expect in the coming year? And we ask them to rank and rate things in terms of what's important to them. And I'm going to get into some of those results. But before I do that, I want to say that the survey researchers at the Bureau did a great job this year. We had over 211 responses to our manufacturing survey, and I think that's a record high. And we had over 88% response rate. And for those of you that do a little bit of research work or know anything about survey research, 88% response rate's really fabulous. So I want to thank our survey team at the Bureau, and I definitely want to thank the manufacturers that took the time to respond to our questions. All right, so what did we see in 2011? It brought improvement for some of the Montana manufacturers and their employees. Still, we did see a net loss of about 600 manufacturing jobs in Montana during 2011, and about a quarter of the firms that we spoke to in our survey did report that they laid off folks. On the positive side, though, we actually have some good numbers here. About 30% reported that they did increase employment during 2011. 3/4 of the firms that we talked to made no curtailments during the year, and 90% of the firms that we talked to said that they did not eliminate any manufacturing capacity at their facilities. So they're holding tight, or they're getting ready for some growth. Between 35 and 45% of the manufacturing firms that we spoke to across the state said that they had either increased sales, increased profits, or increases in production during the year. I will also say that across the state, you can see there on the slide, 44% indicated that they did make major capital investments during the year. And so there are some manufacturers that are definitely seeing growth today and expecting more growth in the future and are making investments to deal with that growth. The Montana manufacturing outlook is slightly less optimistic than it was last year, but still you can see about 88% of the manufacturers in the state expect conditions to be better or the same as they were in 2011. The most optimistic segment was machinery and equipment manufacturing, and 48% of them said, we expect the year to be better than 2011. We expect 2012 to be better than 2011. And you can see on the graph here that only 11% of the manufacturers in the state think that 2012 will be worse than 2011. But I will tell you that about half of that 11% bar there are in the wood products industry in the state. So what does that mean in terms of employment? The employment outlook in manufacturing has really not changed much from last year. Manufacturers statewide are really expecting pretty flat conditions in terms of hiring. Not necessarily the same situation at the county level. Here in Missoula County, the outlook was actually better than the statewide outlook. There are more manufacturers here, 47% in Missoula County versus 36 statewide, that expect a better year. And only 6% here think that things will actually be worse in the coming year. I'll also tell you that almost 40% of the manufacturers in Missoula County expect to see an increase in employment for 2012, and only 5% expect to see a decline in their employment. So yes, the county has been hit hard over the past 4 to 5 years. Manufacturing has been hit hard in Missoula County with the wood products industry declines, and certainly Ravalli County has been suffered from some of that as well. But there is clearly optimism among manufacturers in the county for better times ahead. So what's our manufacturing forecast statewide for 2012? We're not expecting a lot of change, very little, in fact, from what we saw in 2011, but that certainly varies by sector and from firm to firm. The recovery in Montana, as you've been hearing all along today, is expected to be slow. Again, the permanent losses that we've seen in the wood products industry and that we saw at Sioux Falls, the aluminum, are going to have lasting impacts. These are relatively large employers for the state, and so when they lay off people or when they close down, that has a lasting impact that's hard for small manufacturers or small businesses to make up. Kind of like say it takes a lot of bakeries and a lot of breweries to make up for a pulp mill in terms of the number of people that it employs. Some of the things that ruin manufacturers' minds as we spoke to them, health insurance costs was the biggest, and workman's comp was also something that's still a big concern among manufacturers in the state. 98% of the manufacturers that we spoke to identified health insurance costs as being very important or somewhat important. They also mentioned the rising cost of energy, and that was roughly half. Half of them said their energy costs went up during the year, and half of them said they expect their energy costs to go up next year. So energy costs still relevant. This slide shows the outlook for our forest products folks that we talked to around the state. Firms are substantially less optimistic in wood products than they were last year. You can see they're only about 11% expect 2012 to be better than 2011. And I will tell you that of the wood products firms we spoke to, 90% of them do not expect to make major capital investments during 2012. So that's a sign that they are not, again, that they're not overly optimistic, or they're not particularly optimistic for the coming year. Employment in the wood products industry, currently we have about 6,500 private sector forest industry workers in Montana, and that includes self-employed loggers, foresters, wood and paper products employees in manufacturing facilities. And that employment is down about 3% from where we were in 2010. And earnings among wood products folks are down about 5%. So those that are still hanging in there and working are making a little bit less money than they did last year, according to the numbers we've seen. So the employment outlook, again, is pretty subdued. It's not really improved for Montana wood products manufacturers. Montana and the U.S. wood industries are definitely recovering very slowly from the massive downturn we saw in U.S. home construction, new home construction. Repair and the remodel sector of wood products is becoming increasingly important, as is multifamily residence construction. These are growing areas of interest, growing areas that are accounting for a bigger share of what they did historically in terms of the wood products markets. We saw substantial increases in the Asian demand, particularly Chinese demand for wood products and for raw logs during 2010, and then even bigger increases in that demand in 2011. Of course, how long this Chinese demand will continue, that remains a question. How much will it reach into Montana, impact us compared to Oregon and Washington, the coastal states? That's an important question as well. My prediction there is that we should be expecting cyclical cycles in this Chinese demand. It's not always going to be raging. Sometimes it's going to be subdued, and sometimes it's going to go back up. In fact, the bottom half of 2011, we saw a slowing down in that Chinese demand for logs and lumber, and that demand is expected to go up and peak again probably somewhere in the second quarter of 2012. New markets for wood products, They're emerging slowly. Certainly biomass energy, biofuels, specialty chemicals, these are things that we've been hearing a lot about. Certainly the federal government's putting money, investing in research and development in these fields, but they're evolving slowly, not just in Montana, but nationwide. There are other new products out there. One that comes to mind is cross-laminated timber, and that's grown in recent years, decades in Europe, and it may be coming to our shores and a manufacturing facility near you sometime, hopefully. Montana still has a substantial integrated forest products industry. That means we have everything from professional foresters, loggers, milling infrastructure, we have secondary wood products producers, and facilities that use mill residues. So that enables our public and private landowners to manage their forest lands. But I will say that the industry in Montana is changing. Most of the largest wood products firms in the state are gone, and the wood products manufacturing is much more a small business. It's much more situated among smaller facilities around the state than in previous years. Forecast, 2012 markets are expected to be somewhat better. Scott mentioned that we had 607,000 new homes built in the U.S. in 2011, and the number is expected to be somewhat higher for 2012. But real recovery in U.S. housing, or I should say in U.S. home building, is not expected until 2013. Montana's timber harvest and lumber production figures may increase somewhat during 2012, but again, they're probably going to remain well below our historical averages simply because of the number of large firms that we've lost over the past 4 or 5 years and the decade before that. So while there is general optimism for better market conditions, I will say that it's probably going to continue to be increasingly expensive for landowners in Montana to manage their forest land. So whether you're a private landowner with a woodlot or a tree farm, or whether you're a public landowner in charge of managing public resources, it's going to be more expensive to get things like fire hazard reduction done, to get salvage logging to recover value from beetle kill. These things have become more expensive to do. 2012 could bring us more permanent closures, but we also may see more development in these new uses of wood. And I think there's a couple that I would like to mention right off the bat. The new chipping facility out at the former Bonner, out in Bonner at the mill site there. They're chipping logs to send to Wallula, the paper mill there. We also have specialty users of wood like algae aquaculture up in Sioux Falls and blue marble here in Missoula. And these are some new uses of wood. Again, they're not gigantic facilities, so they're not employing hundreds of people, but they are helpful to see new developments. And with that, I will be glad to take questions in wood products or manufacturing. And thank you for your time.
We have a question. The mic is getting to you. And in the meantime, Mr. Mayor, if you would come forward. And the question for Todd.
Could you explain what cross-laminated products are?
Sure. Cross-laminated timber, now I've seen some pictures and some videos of it. It's a product that's wood that's kind of laid up a lot like you've heard of laminated timbers before, which is basically 2x4s stacked on top of each other, glued together. Cross-laminated timber is a panel product that's made with small pieces of lumber. And again, they're laid up in certain ways. They can be multiple layers thick, anywhere between 3 and like 9 layers thick, but they're a panel. So imagine a sheet of plywood that's been built in a different way than plywood is typically built now, which is where you kind of unpeel the wood off the log. This takes chunks of lumber, puts them together in a panel shape, then with computer-aided design, it cuts the windows, it cuts doors, all these things into the panel. They bring the panels on site, and they stand them up, put the roof panels on with the wall panels, and you can essentially roof a house and put the 4 walls up in a day or in several hours, as opposed to a stick frame construction, which takes longer. And there's different things you can do with the cross-laminated timber in terms of densities of the wood for acoustic or for heat insulation. So it's a really nifty product, and it seems to be gaining attention in the U.S. industry.
Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We always have, give him another hand if you wish. We always have a local outlook at these seminars, and today we are pleased to have someone that you all know, Mayor John Engen, to give us a Missoula view of Missoula. So, Mayor.
Well, thank you and good morning. Pleasure to see all of you today. My presentation, as is typical, will be utterly devoid of data and based on wild speculation and anecdote. So I hope you're prepared for that. We do have several slides, however, Ian, if we could cue those up. No, we don't have a PowerPoint. I made some quick notes, ladies and gentlemen, using the Mayor Speech app. If you have a chance to pick that up, you ought to. You'll find it's highly entertaining. So here at the City of Missoula, as many of you know, we have embarked on an economic development effort that has culminated in an organization called the Missoula Economic Partnership. And that organization is a public-private partnership that has broad-based community support, government support, institutional support, large employer support, and I think folks on the ground support to do a couple of things that are simple yet remarkably difficult. They are to build wealth in our community and create jobs. So over the course of the last now 2 years, we've been in the business of creating an economic development strategy for Missoula that makes sense for Missoula, creating some goals around that. Those documents are done, that work is done, and now the effort is to create an organization and create the relationships as part of that organization to move toward those goals of creating jobs and building wealth. We're making steps in the right direction. We've had a couple of bumps in the road on the way with regard to the organization itself and personnel. We're overcoming some of those hurdles, and we're looking to hire a new executive here in the very near term. We have a number of fantastic applicants, our headhunter tells us, and those folks are actually pretty dialed into the way we work in Montana, and in some cases in western Montana in particular. So I think we have tremendous hope and opportunity there. I can tell you that my sense of things in Missoula, based on what I hear on the ground, what I'm hearing from folks who are engaged in retail, from folks who are engaged in all manner of small business, is that there is a little more optimism. No one's doing backflips, but generally speaking, the needle seems to be sort of tweaking in the right direction for them, and the charts are graphing upwards, trending upwards. And I think that, along with what I hope will be some enhanced confidence over time, will get us over the hump. And what we're seeing in the data presented today, I'm not sure is necessarily surprising to anyone, but again, I think that optimism is key, and I think it's felt in a number of sectors. I think we have some real opportunities here, and those opportunities have much to do with capitalizing on our assets and working together. I just finished some tough duty in Orlando, Florida, at an economic development conference, and I can tell you that Missoula, Montana, and the Pacific Northwest is not the Southeast. We are never going to be a region, in my opinion, where site selectors, folks who locate businesses around the country, are going to plunk down food processing facilities or large-scale manufacturing facilities, in no small part because our labor market is frankly too educated, and the quality, frankly, is too high. We have some real opportunity here to, I think, serve in a niche, and that niche has everything to do with the folks who have already self-selected, folks who are doing business here for all sorts of reasons that have to do with our place and our people. Among those businesses are firms who are engaged in tech, and that can be as simple as programming. And some of those jobs, some of those companies come here and operate in the 5 or 10 or 15 job range. But those 5 or 10 or 15 jobs pay $65 or $75 or $80 or $100,000 a year. And I tell you, as somebody who's interested in this, I will take those 5 and 10 and 15 job shops at that wage rate all day long. I'm not sure that we're any longer in the business of doing economic development by trying to land a whale. I think some fine trophy fish make a whole bunch of sense. I hope create some diversity in the marketplace, et cetera. One of the things that we're seeing from these companies who are doing business here today is they recognize the assets, and here's what I think those assets are based on what those folks are telling me and what I'm hearing from some of these site selectors. One is you can't underestimate quality of life. It is not the only component that's going to build your economy and guarantee a bright future, but it makes a huge difference. Another piece of it is, believe it or not, our regulatory environment is very attractive to a bunch of folks, and I'm hearing it over and over again. In fact, there was a small company from Seattle that elected to return to Missoula, begin doing business here, and when I asked them why they were here, the two issues were, we like Missoula, we're from here, we want to return, and we can't do business in Seattle. So one of the things that we can do, I think, as a community, and one of the things that I'm going to encourage us to do at the Missoula Economic Partnership is, frankly, go knock on some doors in the Puget Sound and suggest to folks that if you have any desire to come to Missoula, the doors are open, there's opportunity, and there are other folks who are doing business just the way you're doing business, who believe in the place and can offer some third-party validation that we're a good place to do business. You'll also see, I think there was a headline today or yesterday, I don't recall exactly because I read a lot of headlines, some of which frighten me. But one of those headlines had to do with the state's environment for business, and we got a fine ranking. Well, at this conference I attended, it turns out that lots of folks get fine rankings, and that's not the filter that most folks are using to determine where they're going to do business. They're actually relying on folks who are already on the ground doing business. So we have a number of ambassadors in our community who I think can help us get there. Our relationship with the University of Montana and really the potential we have for capitalizing on the education and research potential at the university is remarkable, and I think we've only begun to scratch the surface of how we can work together to leverage those resources to make sure that employers know that we have a smart, intelligent, and flexible workforce that's willing to adapt to a variety of needs. Short version, we remain in a fantastic place. We've got a great quality of life. That matters, but what matters in the end really is our ability to have our act together. That's what businesses are looking for. That's what folks who consult with businesses are looking for. They want to know that state, local, and federal governments are in alignment. They want to know that we can work together. They want to know that they can deal with us in a way that's seamless and consistent and effective and efficient. And so in my seat, that's one of the challenges we have, but I also think it's one of the opportunities and one of the areas where I can tell you we're already making pretty remarkable strides in working together, having our act together, and presenting our place as a fantastic place to do business. With that, I will avoid any questions you have. Provided I have time, Ian.
Any questions for the mayor?
I'll take snowplow questions. Yes, ma'am.
Will the Russell Street bridge and the 3rd Street level out?
The question is how soon will the Russell Street Bridge and the 3rd and Russell project actually come to fruition?
2050. No, actually, so we've actually made some pretty remarkable progress. In fact, just yesterday, I signed our final agreement with the Montana Department of Transportation that marches us down a cooperative arrangement to do design. It's a huge step in light of the completion of an environmental impact statement. So really, we're as close as we've ever been. We're in a design phase rather than in a we hope we get somewhere phase. So, my sense of things is that we will begin construction on 1.5 miles of road in Missoula, Montana, 14 years after we began talking about it. So we hope to be in the ground late 2013, early 2014, maybe sooner if we live cleanly. I am staying for the lunch panel.
John will also be here for our lunch panel, so if another question comes up in your mind, there'll be another opportunity. So with that, let's break for lunch, and then we'll have, I hope, a very good panel discussion for you after you're served. Thanks. We're approaching the final part of our program today, but I also want to recognize one more time our statewide sponsors, Northwestern Energy, Benefis Health System, Pacific Steel and Recycling, and our local sponsor, First Interstate Bank. Please give them a hand. And I want to recognize and thank once again all the folks at the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research for all the work that they put into these Economic Outlook seminars. Don't forget your evaluation forms. You can drop those off in the foyer as you're leaving, and believe me, the Bureau folks do pay attention to those, and they actually make changes in the program based on your comments. So make sure that you do that. We have a very distinguished panel to join us here at lunchtime, beginning with Jim Foley, the Executive Vice President from the University of Montana, Mayor John Engen, who you've heard from before, Bob Rowe, who is the CEO of Northwestern Energy, and also Eric Stein, who is a Senior Advisor for Economic Policy and Energy Development for Governor Brian Schweitzer. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. We've heard a lot of forecasts today. We've heard a lot of discussion of what the future may hold, particularly for the coming year. What I'd like to have each of you do, and also we will take questions from the audience, but to begin with, give me a sense of what the story will be for your organization or institution, at least for the next 12 months, if not beyond. And Bob, let's start with Northwestern Energy. What is going to be the story that we will hear, see, perhaps experience in the information that comes to us from your company over the next 12 months and beyond?
Sure. The two words I would use to summarize that are investment and engagement. Investment in our facilities and services, investment in our people, engagement, again, within the company with our employees across our three-state service territory, and engagement with our communities. I'll come back and talk a little bit about that. Most of you, I think, know the history of Montana Power, Northwestern Energy. What we have decided to do as a company is focus entirely on being a utility. As we grow, we want to grow as a utility, and that means that our business model really is about investment in the infrastructure and the service for our customers of all kinds. As our customers do well, as communities like Missoula thrive, that's good for us. And then conversely, if we're focused on what we're supposed to be doing, that ought to be good for you as well. One of the themes, I'm not sure Pat Barkey hit this quite as strongly this morning, but one of the themes is companies nationally are still tending to hoard cash as we come out of the recession, and to the degree they're investing, they may be investing somewhere else. Well, at Northwestern, we've been investing in our system, in our people, and that investment isn't somewhere else, that investment is right here. We've appreciated being able to participate with the BBER traveling around the state. We're the largest publicly traded company in Montana. We report to our equity owners every quarter. report to the credit ratings agencies, report to our employees. This has been an opportunity to report to our communities and our customers. Held a reception last night here, a lot of you were at, and because I'm boring, I've inflicted a very long PowerPoint on everyone. If you're interested in some more detail to respond to Ian's question, you can get that on our webpage at www.northwesternenergy.com/ISG, Infrastructure Stakeholder Group. A lot of information up there about our infrastructure plan specifically. Think about utility service as a couple of layers, natural gas and electric both, supply, transmission, distribution, and then all of the customer service aspects. On supply, post-supply deregulation, our challenge has been to rebuild portfolios, gas and electric, that are stable over time, diverse, adequate, robust. On the gas side, Montana Power used to own about 50% of the natural gas it served to its customers. Those prices were based on the cost of service. Those were all sold, and supply deregulation. We're on the market now. Volatility, sometimes up, sometimes down. We're very cautiously going back into acquiring natural gas that can serve our customers at the basis of cost over the long term. On the electric side, again, rebuilding a portfolio of diverse resources. When I came on board, there were no electric resources under cost-based regulation. Our only non-regulated resource in Montana. In South Dakota, it's a pretty conservative place. We're vertically integrated. We own our own resources there. In Montana, our non-regulated resource was our interest in Colstrip 4. That's now dedicated to serve customers. We built the Dave Gates Generating Station at Mill Creek last year, came in on time under budget, providing a critical asset, keeping our system in balance. Currently, we have in front of the commission our first wind plant that would be actually owned. We have other wind on the system, actually quite a lot. First wind plant that would be owned and operated by us. If you're interested in our supply plan that we filed with the Montana Commission, that's available on our webpage too. Going down to transmission, to serve our Montana customers, we've got 7,000 miles of high voltage transmission lines in Montana, 2,000 miles of high pressure gas. Just completed a 2-year planning process on the electric transmission side to identify places we need to reinforce. On the gas side, we're regulated from a safety perspective at the federal level. San Bruno was an incident on the gas transmission system. We're fully compliant with those regulations. What our gas transmission people want to do is exceed compliance. So we're developing plans now to invest very, very significantly in ensuring that our gas transmission system significantly succeeds those federal requirements. The biggest part of our network in Montana is the distribution network. It's the thing that connects all of you at your homes and businesses. It's the part of utility service that is truly taken for granted. We operate in Montana 70,000 miles of electric distribution, 5,000 miles of gas distribution. Every year we invest more than we depreciate out. That's good, that's the right thing to do, but it's not enough. One of the keys that I think everyone who looks at economic development focuses on is infrastructure. Bridges, roads, sewers, water systems, and utility infrastructure. We have embarked on a 7-year plan, our distribution system investment plan, to invest very significantly below that base in both the gas and the electric systems. Got a lot of outside input. We believe in stakeholder consultation. We set up a stakeholder group to look at our distribution system, develop really good forward-looking plans, hundreds of millions of dollars over a 7-year period on the distribution side. On the customer side, investing in systems to simply provide customers a better experience. We have continued to ramp up our energy efficiency programs. That's been a great addition. It's been a neat thing to see both businesses, nonprofits, government, as well as residential customers participate in that. I want to say a little bit about the financial soundness of the company. We were all customers of Montana Power when it went in a little bit different direction. And again, I mentioned we're focused on being a utility and want to provide as much transparency to all of you. What you should know is that we, on the credit rating side, we've had upgrades over the last several years from all three of the credit ratings agencies. A lot of utilities around the country have been downgraded. Of course, the United States government was downgraded. On the equity side, we have a lot more coverage. Analysts are covering us who weren't. When I came on board, our largest investor was a hedge fund. Hedge funds have their place, but that's not the kind of investor portfolio you want if you're looking out to provide service over the long term. Now, the only hedge fund we have in our top 50, I think this will change over time, is number 26. So we're getting investment from institutional investors who are willing to support those long-term plans. So we want to be there for you as you pursue all of your plans. As a company, in 2012, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary. We're looking forward to hopefully being here, and we're dating back to 1912 when Montana Power was formed, and similar things going on in South Dakota. We want to be here for you for the next century as well. Last, I'm going to say just a little bit about what we do in Missoula. We've got almost 100 people operating out of the Missoula territory. We're your largest taxpayer year over year. And we've one of the services we make available to businesses in our service territory is an economic impact model run by a consulting firm in Bozeman. We've done that on our own economic impact. It's, I think, the standard model that the BBER would use as well, and estimate that our impact, the presence in Missoula, is about $162 million year over year. And again, that's providing infrastructure and service here in the community, not an export product, but, although we do obviously provide the highways for export as well. We've got employees in the company who have been here for half of that 100 years. One of them who's not been here 100 years, but Vicki Judd, could you stand up, please, just to embarrass you? If you have any questions. I've worked with Vicki in different capacities in 4 decades now, and a lot of people in Missoula think Vicki either runs the company or should. If you have any questions, get a hold of me, but get a hold of Vicki as well. And thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Eric, let's turn to you. From the perspective of the Schweitzer administration, what's going to be the story of 2012 with both economic development and energy?
Thank you, Ian. I think that the story is going to...
And probably get the mic a little bit closer there.
You're going to continue to hear the governor tell the same story he's been telling pretty much for the last 7 years since he's been in power. That this state has a strong economy and it's getting stronger, and we're doing remarkably better than the rest of the nation. We're developing more energy of all kinds than we've ever developed before. That trend is going to continue upward. And that we have an excellent business climate, an excellent tax climate, and that you should feel lucky to be doing business in Montana. Bob touched on one interesting point, and that is that he finds that the number of bad debts in Montana is better than any utility in the nation. Was that right? Is that
we have the third lowest bad debt of all the utilities that reported in the country.
right? And it's just one more little indicator. You saw before the gentleman that did the presentation about manufacturing talked about the optimism that he sees among manufacturers. Let me go through a few things. Mayor Engen talked about site selection. When investors and businesses take a look at Montana, they look at things like the overall climate. Things like Forbes magazine, Business Facilities magazine, the Tax Foundation. These are publications and organizations that rank the various states and how their business and tax climates are. We are in the top 10 across the board in all rankings. Forbes magazine just rated us the #1 place to start a business in America for entrepreneurship. Just 2 days ago, the Tax Foundation says we had ranked us as the 8th best business tax climate in America. Business Facilities magazine ranks us in the top 10 in probably 8 or 9 different categories in terms of business friendliness, in terms of tax burden, things like that. So, the governor really likes to go out there and talk about the strength of this economy relative to the rest of the nation, and the strength of our business climate relative to the rest of the nation. Obviously, we're not immune from the national recession, as you saw things like wood products and housing have taken a hit, of course, they have everywhere. But our unemployment rate just dropped again. It's been sort of tracking steadily at about 2 or 2.5 points below the national average. And you also see, again, back to the point about optimism, you heard Mayor Engen talk about how people in Missoula actually ultimately think that things are, could be quite a lot worse than they are. And you see the same type of guarded optimism around the state. One thing that has stood out that we've talked about quite a bit is there is some polling done recently around the country, and they asked citizens in all the states whether they thought that their economy was on the right track or the wrong track. And Montanans said that we're on the right track by, I think, 58%. 58% said that we're on the right track. That's something that you don't see anyplace else in America, save for a few states like North Dakota and states that are really doing much better than the nation as a whole. So we really are in a minority of states in terms of the position we're in. And for anybody who's heard the governor speak lately, he really likes to hammer that point home. It is an election year, and so you have a big Republican gubernatorial primary that's going to take place. It's already taking place. And you hear, they talk about the other side. They like to sort of talk about how bad things are. Well, that's politics, and obviously politics and government can't be separate. But from the governor's office, we're going to be talking about how we have, generally speaking, a very strong story to tell in the Montana economy. And I would just say that, in addition to the indicators and the business climate and the optimism and the strength of the conducive climate to growth, we are doing extremely well out east with our with oil. We're developing more coal and more oil really than at any time in history. The Bakken is producing extremely strongly. Places like Sidney, Montana, obviously, as you know, you can't get a hotel room for, they're booked a year ahead right now, and they're going gangbusters. Often you hear people say, well, how come we're not doing as well as North Dakota? Well, it's actually very simple. The North Dakota Bakken formation is different than the Montana formation. The oil is closer to the surface there. And so we don't have quite what they have, but what we have is very good and very productive. We also have a better tax climate for developing oil. I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize. Right now, North Dakota developers in North Dakota are complaining that their development taxes on oil are too high, and they want it to be more like Montana. So it's important to look at all the facts. This is going to be a very loud year in terms of people shouting about what does or does not need to happen with things like tax law in Montana, because it is going to be a very political year. Final point I'll make, can I make one more? And that is that the Keystone Pipeline, was discussed earlier. The governor is a major supporter of the Keystone Pipeline. He really brokered a deal to create an on-ramp in Baker, Montana, that was not originally in the plans for the pipeline. TransCanada originally was just going to send the pipeline straight through, and we were just going to, get some tax benefits, but there was never a plan to be able to put Montana oil onto the pipeline. That is now a reality. So when it does get built, and it will get built, we're going to be able to add value to Montana, to the oil of Montana producers. And in terms of what's going on with the pipeline, the reality is that Nebraska is holding it up right now. You're going to see a lot of noise and smoke this year nationally because it's a big political football, but Nebraska has decided to halt the operation because they have an aquifer problem, and they're debating what to do about it. And until they resolve their state issue, unfortunately, there isn't anything that we can do. We're just going to have to wait. But I do believe that it is going to be built, and it's going to be an excellent project, and it's going to be very valuable to the state.
Eric, in the time the administration has left, might there still be a story to be told about solar and wind or non-fossil fuel here in the state?
Yes. We have a couple of very interesting projects going on in Montana right now, having to do with electricity storage from wind, which I think is the kind of thing you and I were discussing earlier, Ian. For example, Zinc Air is a company up in Kalispell. They're building batteries for storage. Problem with wind, as most of you here know, but probably some of you don't, is that it blows all the time, but you can only harness it at certain times. But a lot of times there's more wind than there is demand for power, and so the object is to try to find scientists and entrepreneurs have long been trying to find a way, a sure and certain way, and a cost-effective way to harness the wind that is the surplus wind that is blowing when demand is not quite high enough to be able to use all of it. Obviously, most of that, a lot of that is at night, and there are a variety of approaches to this. One of them is that you use compressed air storage, and then basically you use the power, the off-peak power, to compress air into giant caverns and holding spaces, and then you can mix that with natural gas and sort of release it and burn it at higher peak times. The other is obviously a more traditional and conventional thing, which is battery storage, and that's what they're working on at this company up in Kalispell. It's really going forward at a very nice speed, and I think you're going to see a lot of that being implemented soon. And then there's also pump storage, where you basically use surplus electricity from windmills to pump water up to a height, and then you release it when you need that. That's stored power, and you release it back down and essentially turn it into hydroelectric power. And so those are the types of things that you're going to see. And there's also the bigger and the longer term thing, which is carbon storage and clean advanced coal technology, gasification, IGCC. It's further out, but we're trying to move as fast as we can. We have a major carbon storage project coming out of Montana State University, which is a $67 million project, and they're going to be experimenting with storing CO2 in the Keeban Dome out in.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Yeah. Jim Foley, some obvious changes at the University of Montana in higher education. We have a relatively new president, although he is a familiar face in Royce Engstrom. We will very shortly have a new commissioner of higher education, although for those in higher ed, he also is a familiar face, since Clayton Christian comes from the Board of Regents. But beyond that, what will the story of U of M be, not just in Missoula, but in the other units around the state for this coming year?
Well, thank you, Ian. Good afternoon. Actually, Montana University System has two new presidents, one at the University of Montana, one at Montana State University, and 4 new chancellors or deans at the other affiliated campuses around the state. So there's a lot of new leadership that's coming in, which includes the new Commissioner of Higher Education. I think what I would like to talk about is maybe 3 things. One is there was a study done at Georgetown University in the last couple of months, which basically stated that across the nation, and including in Montana, more than 65% of the new jobs that are going to be created will require some form of advanced education beyond a high school diploma. And that includes Montana. And it doesn't mean just a 4-year degree, it means certificates, 2-year, tribal college degrees, associate degrees, 4-year degrees, and graduate degrees. Here's the dilemma we have in Montana, though. We have one of the highest high school graduation rates in the country. It's about 83 or 85%. The problem is, out of that, only about 52 or 53% of the students who graduate from high school go on to any form of higher education. And so, as a university system and as the University of Montana, we have already begun discussions with policymakers, many of whom are here today, the new commissioner, the governor, the governor's office, about new energy in the university system and, frankly, funding to be able to do the kinds of things we think we need to do. Not just for Montana, but for the country. And so that's number one. We have already started those discussions to get people to focus in on funding the university system at a level where we keep tuition down, by the way, but we fund it at a level where we can continue to be competitive, not only in this state, but across the country. So that's number one. Number two, you have all heard this discussion about 2-year education across the state. The College of Technology here in Missoula, which I think some of you have heard myself and President Engstrom and others chat about, is the largest and fastest growing 2-year entity in the university system. It's also the oldest. It's in a building that was built in 1968 for 700 people. There are 2,600 students out there right now. So, as many of you know, last time at the legislature, there was a bonding bill, which, by the way, would have created a number of good, high-paying jobs for a long period of time that was defeated, that included the College of Technology. So we'll be chatting with legislators, some of whom are here today, and you can't get out today, by the way, before I chat with you, about trying to fund that entity because it is one of those places where the placement out of that, by the way, the College of Technology, in all curriculum is well above 90%. And so we need to get serious about trying to get a facility in place that can be competitive, again, not just in this state and the region, but around the country. The other thing that I think the University of Montana is very serious about, and the mayor probably chatted about this earlier, I wasn't able to make the comment, so don't hold that against me. And that's the Missoula Economic Partnership. University of Montana is not only a major investor, but we were one of the founding members to be able to be a player in economic development, not just in this community, but in this region. And we don't take that, we take that very seriously, not just with regard to tech transfer or the kinds of students or the kind of curriculum that we're going to put together, but we want to work together with all of you here and across this region about how we can do things different and what we can do to be a better system to be able to find the kind of jobs and place them in the kind of places that you have out there. And then the final point I would make, and because we've gone on a little bit, is we have a challenge here that my friends from the Ravalli County are well aware of, my legislative friends who are at the table to my left out there, and that's the Bitterroot College program. I think the last year when we were here, we talked about that. This is a program that has grown enormously. There are nearly 400 students who are taking classes out in that area. And you know, we have to get serious about how we begin to get some base funding and a facility more so than we're just renting right now to be able to respond to that area. It's a very large, fast-growing area. I know that Senator Lake and his colleagues out there, we've chatted about this, but we have to get serious about how they become a partner in the university system rather than just us trying to fund it year by year. So I think with that, Ian, I'll stop and we can go to other questions as we proceed forward after the mayor speaks.
Well, if I may follow up just briefly, we now have a new northern gateway to the university with Madison Street.
Right.
How about the south end of campus? And we're looking a little beyond 2012 now, but just can you say a couple of words about South Campus?
Well, I don't think there's any secret that the new College of Technology will go on what we call the South Campus, which is currently the University Golf Course. And I understand there are some concerns out there, but as my colleague Rosie Keller knows very well, the master plan that we put together and all that land out there that is currently the University Golf Course was designed for academic facilities and some student housing. And so as we go forward, the growth of the university will be that direction. You know, we own many of the homes except for 4 or 5 of them along 5th and 6th Street, but we feel like the direction we will be going once the COT goes in on the South Campus will be in that area. But I want to make it very clear, it took a lot of hard work to come to the conclusion about what should go in that South Campus. It doesn't mean the golf course is totally going to go away, by the way, for those golfers that still go out there. It just means we're going to have to reconfigure it into what we call an executive course for a while. But the first building would be the College of Technology that we hope the legislature funds and we can begin to work on in the summer and fall of 13.
John, from the city's perspective, and maybe you can just talk about local government in general. You did mention the partnership, and you were asked about Russell and South Third. But for the rest of this year and looking beyond, really, what is going to be the story for the city of Missoula?
You know, I'll wear a couple of hats today, Ian, and first quickly on the partnership stuff. You know, the relationship that we have with the leading institutions and employers in the community and small employers as well. Those relationships are pretty remarkable. We need to continue to build those. And a piece of it is we need to reach out to businesses who haven't been touched in a long time by any of the folks working in the economic development space. And it's nobody's fault. It's just a matter of limited resources and lots to do, and we need to concentrate on some of those efforts. And what we're learning from businesses a little bit is A, what they need, and B, what their expectations are of economic development and the various institutions who are participating. So we're gonna continue to listen, understand those needs, and do our best to work together to meet those needs. You know, at City Hall, we are going to continue to be about improving service delivery. Some folks suggest that government ought to run like a business. Well, I tell you, the day that government runs like a business, there are going to be a whole bunch of angry people because we'll do stuff pretty quick and we ain't going to ask you about it. That's not what government is about. That does not mean that we can't be effective and thoughtful and always improve. So we're talking a lot about service delivery, and that ranges from the process by which you get a building permit the process by which you come to see the mayor, the process by which you get a business license. Today, if you come to City Hall, you enter the first floor and you may either stand in line for a jury trial or get directed to the office you need to get directed to. But chances are you're on your own the minute you walk into City Hall. We can do better. And there are countless examples of how we can do better, and we've been working on that in a number of ways. The overriding theme when I talk to folks who want to do business in Missoula, the overriding theme I hear from existing businesses, the overriding theme I hear from ordinary citizens who want to engage in one way or another with municipal operations is we want it to be consistent, we want it to be predictable, and we want it to be about problem solving. And so those are the challenges we have, and some of that we do very well, some of it not so well, but we're going to continue to work to do it better. The other piece of business that's always at play is we simply need to continue to deliver the services on the ground that make a city. You have an expectation that when you call 911 and report a fire, a big red truck will show up. We need to make sure that that happens every day, all day. We need to do the same with police. We need to do the same with our roads. We need to make sure that, apart from an occasional snowstorm or last year's festival of potholes, that we're maintaining the infrastructure that allows us to live, work, and play in our community. Without that, we lose not only a competitive advantage as we think about business, but a quality of life advantage. We all deserve a fantastic place to live, and we're stewards of maintaining and enhancing that place. And we need to continue to build relationships with not only our citizens, but the other institutions who are integral to the quality of life in our community. And that happens on either side of me. Mr. Rowe, I really appreciate the tax dollars that you contribute to our operations. I just finished servicing your car. You were a little light on windshield washer fluid. I topped that off. I'm not sure I can get the buffing done this afternoon, but we'll work on that. But we need to build relationships with the folks in the private sector and folks in the public sector. The relationship that we've established with the University of Montana, I think, is as good as it's probably ever been. And that relationship keeps growing because we recognize that we have a shared responsibility to make this place great. One of the things that we're recognizing, not only at Jim's level in terms of education, but at Alex Apostle's level in terms of education, is we're all in this together. And from soup to nuts, from start to finish, we need to integrate what we do. We need to demonstrate that we have our act together, and we need to provide consistency and a commitment to the kids of this community that they're going to get a quality education regardless of their circumstances. And there are a whole bunch of folks who are aligned around those notions in a way that they haven't been aligned in a long, long time. And that's significant. And it's a product of work. It's a product of tucking away egos, which is not always the easiest thing to do. It's a product of setting aside turf battles and acknowledging that when we have limited resources, our best opportunity to work together and get things done is that kind of cooperation, that kind of relationship building, and being creative around that. Ian had mentioned that entrance to campus at 5th, 6th, and Arthur Streets, Madison Streets. That's a product of the City of Missoula and the University of Montana working together to figure out how to solve a problem. And we did it fast, we did it inexpensively, and we'd like to try to do it with Russell Street, but we don't have enough dough. Part of this is local solutions to local problems. And whenever we can, when we can rely on folks at the state in particular to help us along, we'll do that. But the more we work together, the more we concentrate on our efforts and local solutions, the better off we are going to be. That issue around the College of Technology is not a university issue. It is a Missoula issue. It's a community issue. And I'm not sure if I can make this any clearer. Students at the College of Technology are all about jobs. Every one of those students is a job. That's the way I think we need to look at that. And, we're sort of out of the workforce development, I think, realm in Missoula. What we need to be is in the work, the business we need to be in is in the workforce employment realm. We've got fantastic people with great educations. We just need to make sure that we're tooling in the right way and we're telling our story about workers, jobs, the quality of life of our place, and the fact that we work together. A great relationship with Missoula County is making a huge difference in the way we move forward. And some of you have had some experience in other parts of the state where counties spend most of their time suing cities and vice versa. We don't do that here. And we don't do that because we talk to one another, we recognize that we have mutual interests and that we serve the same citizens and that we have a responsibility to get stuff done. It ain't perfect by a long shot, but it's always getting better, and building those relationships is critical. We're going to keep doing it.
So what would you all like to know? What would you like to ask these folks? We got a couple of mics. Raise your hand. If we can get a mic to you, we will. Otherwise, yell it out and I'll repeat the question. We have a question right up here. Bob, that table right there.
This is a question for Bob. What's your commitment to capital spending in Missoula?
The base budget in Missoula for 2012 is probably right around, I've got some numbers here, about $5 million base. On top of that, the distribution system investment program, and obviously then all the expense with employees as well.
How does that compare with the depreciation of those assets?
This follow-up was, how does that compare with depreciation of assets?
Sure. I couldn't tell you on a Missoula-specific basis. What I could say is that, and here I'm talking about maintenance of existing infrastructure as opposed to building a new plant such as Mill Creek. Over the last 6 years, we've put over $600 million into maintenance in the Montana system, and the net over depreciation out of that is somewhere north of $100 million cumulatively, and then every year that simply increases.
Anybody else? Oh, we have a question. Bob, right up front. Front table. Oh, we can get a mic to you in about 10 seconds here. So. And here we go.
My question is of Jim Foley with the College of Technology. There was a recent article in the Missoulian about not giving enough training for commercial truck drivers. Is that program still going at the College of Technology for training truck drivers?
It is still going, and in fact, ironically enough, I knew that question was going to come up today. So I called over there and spoke to the dean, and they're going to be talking about that more publicly and what's going on with it. I would also add, if I may, because of the topic of the Outlook seminar, one of the great unknowns of places like the College of Technology at the University of Montana is we have an energy tech program there. That 30 people have gone through already. Most of them are in the same Bakken oil fields that my friend Eric chatted about. All of them are placed there. There's 150 in the pipeline that will likely be placed as well. Those are jobs, by the way, in the state of Montana that pay somewhere between $30,000 a year and $60,000 a year. So we need to be a little more nimble, and we hope to do that, and commercial trucking is one of them.
We have a question over here. Yes.
To the governor's office, we appreciate you being here today. I understand we have about a $500 million state surplus right now. What do we look at doing with that surplus from the governor's perspective, and how can we help get the COT funded?
All right. Well,
Would you get the mic a little closer here?
Yeah. The short answer is that the legislature is not going to meet again while we're in office. Either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. So I can't tell you what the legislature would ultimately do going down the line. I do know that the governor believes that having a financial cushion in the bank is the thing that has put us in this position, in this enviable fiscal position to begin with. He's a big believer in, as he likes to say, putting grain in the bin during good times so that you can weather the bad times. I don't know what the national economy has in its future. So I honestly can't tell you with any specificity right now what's happening, what's going to happen in the next year or two, because there are a lot of variables in play. Okay, and as to the College of Technology issue, Jim probably is a better person to ask than me, but he did mention the bonding bill, and whether it's, I don't know what the specific applicability is to the COT. I will tell you that it was a great disappointment of ours, and Jim voiced this also, that it didn't pass last time, and hopefully this next legislative session, which is now only 11 months away, it will get another shot and hopefully pass. It would be a huge shot in the arm to the Montana economy.
Well, seeing no other questions, maybe we can actually let you out of here a skosh before 1 o'clock. But let me just ask each of you, and Jim, I'll start with you, and we'll just go down the table. Economic growth is a value that obviously is very prominent in these seminars. What other values would you like the University of Montana to be associated with this year and going forward?
I think a couple of things. The university system makes up about 43,000 students, if you can believe that, when you talk about all the units. I mean, that's as big as any major public institution around this country. The two flagship campuses, frankly, except for a couple of days in the winter during basketball season and one day in November, actually are working together on a number of projects that are research related, that may evolve into tech transfer. I think the university system, in my judgment anyway, can do a little better about helping create and helping maintain jobs using some of the research that's going on our campuses. We have one here in Missoula that many of you know about, Rivertop Renewables, which is a company that spun out of the University of Montana, currently has, I think, about 15 employees, is in the process of hiring about 15 or 20 more Montana graduates, by the way, both University of Montana and Montana State. So I think we can do a little better job there. Between Montana State University and University of Montana, believe it or not, we do about $160 million in research. And so I think we can, and we've started this process already, of how do we begin to do more tech transfer and how do we begin to do research where it creates jobs off campus, by the way, not just on campus. I think, secondly, we need to have a serious discussion from K through 20 about how, and this is my own 2 cents again, how the legislature funds education in the state. Because I really believe anybody in this room or in this community, whether it's a university community or not, education is a key element, not the only element, but a key element in terms of how you create good, high-paying jobs. And I know my legislative friends are well aware of that, the governor is well aware of that, but I think we're at a point where that discussion is slightly different and we have to figure out how we fund all education in the state. And those are tough discussions, I understand that, because you have lots of folks coming forward for the surplus money, you have lots of, like me, you have lots of folks coming forward to talk about their interests, all of which are very important. But I think education is a key in terms of how you begin to shift the economy of what I call a lightly populated state.
So, Mayor Engen, we want Missoula to have a strong, vibrant, sustainable economy. What else do we want?
Well, the reason I'm interested in that, and I think the reason a lot of folks are interested in that, and this is a little bit old-fashioned, but a thriving middle class in a community like ours means that folks are comfortable enough to make decisions in their lives that enhance community and make life really better for everyone. If you're not making a choice every day between food and shelter, between medicine and transportation, if your choices are about how you engage in your community, how you're involved in your kids' school, how you're involved in your city government, how you're involved in your faith community, how you volunteer to make lives better, all of that is remarkably important, but you have to be somewhat free from some basic worry. So I was at the Methodist Church downtown yesterday with a whole bunch of Missoulians who showed up to take care of a whole bunch of other Missoulians who don't have any place to live. And those are Missoula values. We take care of one another. We recognize our responsibility to one another, and in many cases we don't make judgments about that responsibility. We just get the work done. In July in Missoula, Montana, when almost all of us can leave from our front doors and be in a national recreation or wilderness area in 20 minutes or less, that's remarkable, and that's an incredible value. The place is amazing, and the people don't hurt. Not everything is about a return on investment. There's lots else at play here, but that fundamental quality of life that provides people the instinct and the means to serve one another that's what we're responsible for here. And that's when I show up for work every day, apart from the nitty-gritty detail that ranges from the sublime to the ridiculous. That's what I keep in the back of my head, is I and we are stewards of this fantastic place and responsible for it staying that way.
Bob, value beyond the balance sheet.
Yeah, and first, I think what the mayor just said is right on target. And I completely agree with that. That is what I think probably gets all of us excited. I'll let our employees answer by talking about our vision, mission, and values. The company, when I came on board, had a mission statement that had to do with being a top-performing utility in the upper Midwest. That's not a bad thing for a company, again, coming out of bankruptcy. You've simply got to get your systems, your controls, your finances in order. What we did a couple of years ago was ask a group of employees to create a vision statement, and this was folks from all around the company, people who work at our gas compression station in Cut Bank and all over the company. I had some heartburn because, what if I don't like what they come up with? That's awkward. But what they came up with as a vision was enriching lives through a safe, sustainable energy future. And I'll come back and say a bit about that. And the mission they came up with was working together to deliver safe, reliable, and innovative energy solutions that create value for customers, communities, employees, and investors. What's important about the first one is the idea of sustainability. And that means something in terms of how you provide energy, how we consume energy ourselves. It also has a lot to do with what you're doing to develop employees, what kinds of corporate governance processes you have in place. The idea that we can think about being around, we hope, in some form, for another century. What was impressive on the mission front was the four groups of stakeholders, but our employees actually start by talking about customers. All of the kinds of things that we've talked about up here, you've been talking about all morning, really are part of that. From there, we go to a set of values, and really the investments that we make. We obviously want to do well financially, and it's important that we do to keep attracting investment. But we do that. We can only do that if we're providing the infrastructure, providing the services that really enable our customers, wholesale customers, retail customers, small business, large business, residential, to do well. So that's what our employees are excited about. A quick story, I was in Great Falls, of course, a couple days ago, and they're getting hammered by wind. Lewistown is getting hammered by wind. Crews are out all night long on the electric side, putting things back up. And they absolutely love and believe in and are committed to what they do. And when you think of the utility, when I think of the utility, those are the people that I really think of, and they're your neighbors, and they're here for the long haul.
And then, Eric, finally, beyond just economic activity and a positive balance sheet on the state side, what other values does your administration, the folks you work with, want to leave with at the end of this year?
Helping the last and the least, and funding. Making sure that Montana schools are funded, and making sure that that in tough times that there is a safety net and that people get protected.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience, for sticking with us for a great seminar. Enjoy your afternoon.